Hi, Shruti.
Hi. I don't know what was wrong. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
no. That's totally fine. I actually got a good chance to interact. I'll just adjust my camera because I got the second half of the scene. So, guys,
Okay.
finally we have with us Shruti Kotwal. Shruti is India's fastest female ice speed skater. She's a true example of what a girl can achieve if she's ambitious and determined enough. She's someone who's trained outside her comfort zone in Canada and Netherlands in pursuit of her dream to represent India at the Winter Olympics. And Shruti, the Play and Shine Foundation is so proud to have you here today. And we cannot wait to hear more about your inspirational journey.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the intro. And again, sorry to have, sorry to be a few minutes late,
No,
but
that's
I'm
totally
excited,
fine.
looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so Shruti, to start with, ice speed skating is a very unconventional sport, and even you initially started off with roller skating and then you moved into it. So we would
Yeah.
want to hear more about how that transition happened. What was that day, that moment you realized that ice skating is a true calling, and what was the family support you got when you first told at home that this is what you want to do, this is what you want to make a career in?
Um, to be very honest, I don't think anybody in India, especially girls coming from big cities, don't just we even if they're good at sports, we don't just say that, oh yes, I'm gonna make my career in this sport.
True.
We don't say that because we don't see a lot of athletes, we don't have a lot of idols, and we don't have obviously people supporting us, or the system doesn't support us. So I think my calling was when I went for my first international camp, or I want to call it like a scholarship that was provided by the International Skating Union. I went to Germany for the first time, and when I actually saw how an ice skating rink looks like in my life,
Okay.
I was super amazed, and it was something that I'd never even imagined. Like literally, something that was like, I mean, my mind was blown, and that's when I saw how elite athletes train, how ice skaters actually look like, and what Olympic sport actually is. I mean, here in India, I never had the exposure and had never seen what it actually is. So when I went there, I saw that, and that's when I realized, and I thought, this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to become. So that was actually what started. I mean, what got me started. So I want to say my first international trip is what got me into ice skating more.
So you had shared previously in one of the interviews that your mom is also an athlete. So what was the
Yeah,
kind of support you had from your family when you first told them about making a career in ice skating?
right. Uh, Actually, my mom used to be a track and field athlete. She
Okay.
didn't really pursue that as a career. She did that for a few years of her life, just like most athletes in India, right? Even
Yeah,
if
true.
you're really good at it, like I said, we give up on that because of the circumstances that we're in, family responsibilities, etc. So she did that for a very few years of her life, but she really loved sports. And my family is inclined towards sports. They really like it, but no one took it up as a career. So my mom was very happy when I was actually doing well in skating,
Okay.
and she actually thought, if she's doing well, I'm gonna just take her to the next level, and I'm gonna push her, I'm gonna support her. So I think my family support was the biggest thing for me,
Okay.
because if, I mean, you already are fighting with so many things, right? And if your family is there to back you up, then you don't have to worry about that part, at least. So in my case, my family has been a huge support.
So I think the most important thing for you was that if your family bet on you, you bet on yourself. So I think that's
Right.
great. But
Yeah.
then the way you highlighted, the current situation given in India and people's perception towards sport. And if you
Yeah.
look at that, in addition to the fact that you pursue an unconventional sport like ice skating, what was your struggle of, breaking into it and establishing yourself as India's fastest female ice speed skater?
um So it really just started as, let's try ice skating. After roller
Okay.
skating, I'd done a lot of nationals in roller skating, and I was at a point where I was kind of fed up with how the system works and how sports in India is. And I wasn't very happy with how things were going. So I was like, let's try ice skating. Let's see how this goes. And then I tried out ice skating in Shimla. I did those camps. Obviously, it's much easier or much convenient when you're a roller skater because you have a base already. You can't
True.
just get up one day and say, I want to ice skate. Because you're already a roller skater, you can pick it up faster. So
True.
after I did that, I felt like, um, I mean, this is something that is so unconventional, like you just said. And
True.
after like doing a few international competitions, I saw how different Indian skaters or Indian athletes were from the rest of the world. We
True.
needed so much more. We needed so much more training, so much more everything, actually. So instead of feeling disheartened or instead of feeling like, okay, there's so much gap and when are we ever going to cover it, I actually took it as a challenge and I actually thought that I should be the one who should at least try and reduce that gap and try and take it to international standards. So because someone has to do it, right? Otherwise,
True.
no one is ever gonna inspire other people. So I think the drive to not give up is what got me here, and just the love for sports in general and the passion for skating. That's very like
So I
not
think
too much to think about.
you're the pioneer of the Indian ice speed skating for women. I think that's really great. So I have watched a couple of ice speed skating matches, and it's just a matter of a few seconds because those 500 meters, it's just
Yeah.
once like it. You don't even know, and the game is over. The race is over. So other than the
Right.
technical aspect and the technique and the equipment, how much of importance it is to have the right mindset on the match day, or how important is it to have a good mental training?
Mental training, I have underestimated for a very long time, and I want to say that no athlete should do that. I regret doing that. It's a very important aspect of your training. Physical training and mental training go hand in hand. You can't just work hard physically and not look at the mental aspect, because that is what actually drives you physically. If you're
True.
not mentally strong enough, no matter how much you train, it's going to be useless. And it
True.
comes from someone like me who is extremely who has experienced this. I mean, I really trained hard every day, but I didn't really focus on the mental training aspect side of racing or training. And I really regret that part, because when I was in Canada or whenever I was traveling, and I used to be very homesick, or I used to feel like I want to, I mean, all these little things distracted me from my main thing, like
Yeah.
when I used to have a race day, I used to think about all these other things. And what I thought in my mind was, okay, I've trained a lot, I've practiced too much, I'm going every day, so my race should be fine. But that's not how it works. You're supposed to do a lot of mental training, and it takes work. It can't just happen on race days. It has to happen every single day. You also can't fool yourself into it. You can't just, convince yourself into certain things and say
True.
that, okay, this is how I will do, and, I'll end up getting good results. It's a gradual thing. You have to be consistent with it. And mental training is equally important. So, whenever I meet new athletes, I always tell them to not ignore that aspect, because I have done that, and that's not how it should be. So yeah, mental training, I want to say, sometimes even more important than physical training, because if you are not happy with what you're doing, or if you're not in the right mindset, no matter how hard you train, it's all going to go down the drain.
True.
So yeah,
And I
mental
think it
side.
must be of more importance to you given the fact that you were the first female ice speed skater. So there was a whole lot of uncertainty of, what next. In
Yeah,
addition to that, you were way out of your comfort zone in another country training. And
right.
I think that must be a big challenge because so many times there must be phases where you're into self doubt. I'm putting in so much of money and effort. Where is this going? Is this going to work out? So I
Yeah.
think mental training must have majorly helped you out, and I really like admire that you've come this far with whatever resources you've had till now. So keeping in mind like how important it is to have the right mental temperament given the current situation, like we're all in the middle of a lockdown. We don't know what next. We don't know when we're going to get out of this pandemic. So how are you dealing with this, being stuck at home? Because I think that's the longest any professional athlete must have been away from training, away from this,
Right.
the field, the track, the sports ring. So what advice do you have to give, or how are you dealing with this?
Uh, in all honesty, it hasn't affected me as much as other outdoor athletes
Okay,
because in India we don't have an ice rink anyway, right?
true.
So there is no infrastructure for ice skating. Obviously, I do miss all my other outdoor activities and all my outdoor trainings. But having said that, it's not something like, oh, I would have gotten to go out and skate or something that, especially during this time, because fortunately, this is my off season.
Okay,
So my season starts from around June, so it kind of starts now, and it goes on till March. So it's around these 9 to 10 months that we really work hard. And the next 2 months is when we take it easy. We kind of go home. So it's my time to come back to India. But I came way earlier this year because of COVID.
okay.
But yeah, in my case, it hasn't been that bad compared to all these other probably runners and cyclists and all these people. So yeah, to be very honest, I'm fine being home and I'm quite comfortable. The only problem is that, of course, I am not able to do my outdoor cardio.
Physical training.
That's yeah, that's it.
Okay. So you run a skating academy with your husband in Pune. So you've been
Yeah,
around in the sports arena for more than 10 years now. So from your
yes.
day one till today, do you think there has been any change with respect to people's perception towards skating or the general viewership, participation, or the publicity that the sport has got?
Yes, majorly.
Okay.
When I was skating compared to what's going on right now, the sport has commercialized. Uh, Roller skating. Let's just talk about roller skating because there is no real ice skating market in India. All the ice skaters are basically just roller skaters trying
Okay.
to ice skate.
Okay.
So that's what they are. But other than that, I think the mentality has definitely changed. There is much more awareness for sports, but then again, having said that, I don't think we are still able to produce high quality, high level athletes because in India, unfortunately, we expect too much out of sports. If we invest in something, we quickly, immediately start expecting. So, if a parent is putting a child into any sport activity, immediately what they want is that their child should just in this very same year should qualify for districts, for states,
Very
for
true.
nationals, and that's not how it works.
Yeah.
We are not here to just produce athletes, and unfortunately parents fail to understand that this is a very short term process. If
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this mentality will only give you short term athletes.
True.
In the long run, if you want to have big goals, if you want to actually think about those world championships, Asian championships, if you want to think about Olympics, which is huge, you don't want to focus on these small goals and you don't want to think about these little things when someone is just 7 year old, 8 year old, right?
True.
But that is so difficult. This change in mentality is so difficult to bring about in India.
Very true.
But I'm trying that at my level. I'm trying it as much as I can. But yeah, this is what needs to be changed. We need to keep those big goals in mind and we need to focus on those long term goals like will this child make it to the Olympics? If yes or no will depend on how that child is doing post 14, 15 years of age.
True.
And but in India, 10th standard, 12th standard, we're done. We're gonna quit.
We're going to quit.
So
That's a very common mentality because we
yeah,
conduct a lot of sports parenting workshops. So where we specifically believe that, the success of a child, 90% of it is in the hands of the parents. And if
yeah,
they do not give him the right kind of support or the guidance, that's, almost not going to work out. No matter if you get him the best infrastructure, the best coaches. And I was even listening to one interview of yours where you had clearly stressed that, we shouldn't go by the results. We should really focus on the technique. Even on match day, more than your timing or your ranking, it is whether you could reproduce the technique that you had been training for all these months. And I think that's one kind of thinking that's really lacking. Like, given the fact that I'm a shooter myself, and shooting is also it's a mind sport. It's a game all about technique. It's so common to see, like, coaches generally stress upon the fact that you reproduce the same technique that you were training for, the purpose is sorted. But from the parents' point of view, generally what they slip to is seeing, what are your rankings, and last match you had so many points up, so many points down. And I think that needs to majorly change, so that culture, that mentality needs to change. So I'm sure, like, with coaches like you, and you have an academy that's working towards it, in a few years you'll probably be seeing a positive change in that arena also. So given the fact that you said that we don't have much infrastructure, like we just have, I think, one natural ice ring in Himachal, like ice skating ring in Himachal, and other than that,
and another one in Kashmir, and there's a little track in Gurgaon, Delhi. But again, all these rings are, I want to stress, they're not for professional skaters. We as professional skaters, I mean, if we go and skate there, it's just a huge risk because there's no safety as such, and it's not even close to Olympic size standards. So there are rings for namesake, but right now, if you ask me, and if I'm supposed to go and skate or train in India, I would not. I would really not, because it's like risking my future season. Because if I go there and if I skate, then it's like a huge risk, and I don't want to do that, at least at this point in my life.
Yeah. Ice skating is one of the fastest sports, and if you were to skate on a track that is not safe, I think that's really like gambling with your life, with your legs, and I think everything altogether. So I think it's something you shouldn't trade for. So given the fact that the current infrastructure and the situation in India, do you think anytime in the near future, probably 10 or 20 years, India will be prepared to host the Winter Olympics?
No.
Not anytime soon.
No.
So we've had the Commonwealth Games, we've had a few World Cups and Asian Championships, and like post those games, a lot of other sports have gained glamour. Like, it's not just been cricket now. We have leagues happening in badminton, we have the football league, we have like a lot of events happening in shooting. So do you think there is a need that, India starts organizing such winter games, so, such kind of sports also gain recognition?
I think India first needs to develop infrastructure to produce athletes. That should be the first goal. Organizing events is secondary. We can always go to another country. It's much cheaper to do that than to build an ice rink here. It is definitely cheaper if you are actually investing in a few high-level, high-performance athletes. And investing right now, I mean, obviously, it's always preferred to train in your home country. I myself wouldn't ever want to go out and train. If you ask me, obviously, I would want to train here and come back home, right? Who wants to go and live a lonely life in minus 20 degrees? And I mean, it's not fun at all. But I don't see that happening anytime soon because it's a very high investment. It's just extremely expensive. It also needs a lot of space, and for a tropical country like India, expecting winter sports would not be practical or realistic. So I want to say we could have that as a goal, but right now, why not focus on all these athletes that are already investing? Why not put effort into these athletes and make them better? Of course, if there is infrastructure, then that's the best thing. But I don't see that as a very practical, unless you find somebody who is ready to invest that much. Because it's a very, very expensive project.
Yeah, but that will only happen once that sport gains that kind of momentum in India, or you're not going to get that kind of popularity, that kind of investment. So I think we can start with investing on these athletes who are already out there, who've given their careers, given so much of time and effort. And once these guys prove that India can also excel at such sports, only then we can probably take the next big step. So like looking at your entire journey, it's been very inspirational. Like, you've been a true example of the amount of sacrifice that goes into being an athlete, the amount of determination and focus it takes. So there's no doubt about that. So if you had to give your advice to anyone just starting off in any sport or even skating or ice speed skating, as a matter of fact, if they're in their early stage of their careers or just setting out, what would be that advice to them?
I think I already said it. I'll repeat that. Don't repeat my mistakes. Focus on mental training. Don't
Okay.
just go out there and practice every day and night. It's really important that you practice quality and not quantity. Focus on how well you're doing what you're doing, instead of just thinking about how many hours you're putting in, how many laps you're doing, how many kilometers. That's not important. It's important how well you're doing it. Quality is underrated in India. We need to, I'm highlighting quality again and not quantity.
Quantity.
And mental training again. Don't let anybody or anything affect your passion. You should really just, because when I got into I went for the first time, I still remember I had people asking me, after I told them everything and I would explain what I do, they would come up to me and they would say, okay, but what do you exactly do? Like, okay, skating's fine, but what do you do? So it was extremely hard for them to digest the fact that I am a skater and this is what I do. This is my
True.
profession. I mean, imagine if I was a cricketer and I would say that, okay, I play cricket for 5 hours a day, then that's totally acceptable.
That's
But it's
fine.
not acceptable if I'm skating 8 hours a day and then people are still asking me what exactly I do. So this mentality is going to be there. So instead of trying to change people's mindsets, just forget about them and focus on your own self, which this mentality took very long for me to ingrain in myself, because I would get easily affected when people would ask me such questions. So I'd like to pass it on, and I'd like to tell younger athletes to not take these kind of criticisms into consideration.
So I think this criticism doesn't only come from your friend circle or your colleagues. Many a times when you're looking out for funding from any government authorities or anything of that sort, it's very tough to even make them realize, what you're doing and why this sport is important. Because unless and until you don't belong to a glamorous sport that doesn't have a recognition, they do not understand the kind of funding or the kind of support an athlete needs. And I'm sure you must have faced that yourself.
Yes. Skating, we're fully covered. There's no glamour at all. And we're not even in India, so there's no visibility. We
There's
are
no.
not seen on TV. So again, there's no TV visibility as well. You can't really buy a ticket and come watch our races. So that part is also gone. So, skating or speed skating literally cuts off all these major things that a sponsor would want to invest in, or people would be entertained by. My race is even over before you bend down to tie your shoelaces. So there's not even something like you can sit with popcorn and you can watch my race all day long kind of a thing. So there's no entertainment factor. And unfortunately, in races or sports like these, you really need, you really need to commercialize it first
True.
before, because 100 meters running is less than 10 seconds. And there's still a huge crowd that comes out there to watch.
To watch it.
So if that sport can get the viewership, so can we. But we just have to really, really work upon it. We just don't have the culture for such sports in India. We kind of have a culture for more laid back sports, for sports that you can sit, relax, chill with your family and watch. So that needs to change. A shift is necessary. And I just hope that this happens in the near future, at least not while I'm skating, but at least when this younger generation comes up, hopefully they experience that.
So I think you had stressed one of these points in your previous interviews when you had said that, seldom when you tell people that I didn't qualify for the Olympics or I have 2 seconds to qualify for the Olympics, they do not understand that because they feel that 2 seconds, that'll be done in 2 months. But, when it's a game
Yeah.
of decimals and it's a game of where every microsecond counts, like even in shooting, it's a game of decimals. And when I tell people I missed the final by 1.9 or 1.2, they're like, how can you just like how is it such a small margin? How does that make such a significant difference to the rankings?
Yeah.
So I think that is another thing you have dealt with.
Yeah, imagine the top 10 rankings in the Olympics are all in the same second. So they're
Okay.
all in the same second. So that just shows how close we all are to each other. And second is not even in any question. I mean, when I say 2 seconds, that's just huge. It's probably a 50-meter distance between two skaters, or more than 50 meters. Because if we are able to cover 500 meters under 40 seconds, then imagine how much 2 seconds would cover. So
That's
that's
a
a
blink of
lot.
an eye, literally.
Yeah, it's a blink of an eye, and it's 50 meters. So that's just a lot to actually cover, and it could take, I mean, if you're fortunate and if things go well, 2 months, you would be lucky to cover that in 2 months, but it could even take 2 years, or it could never happen.
Or it could
You
never
just,
happen.
yeah, you never know, because everyone out there is working hard towards the same goal, and precision and few small minor changes here and there is what is going to get you there. So it's very difficult to explain it to people who really don't know how these kind of sports work. So again, it comes down to the same thing, where awareness is really important, and people need to watch these sports a little more to understand how it works.
And I think that's the support from the public and the private sector. It's not the athlete who can, really struggle to this. If everybody collectively comes together, we can really, make a
Yeah.
difference. And at some point of time, we can field ice speed skating team that is like a woman team. And I think we should really start heading in that direction. So Shruti, it was great to have you here today, and I think you gave us some really valuable insights. And to
Thank you so
anybody
much.
else who like watched this live session and wants to know more about Shruti and connect with her, I think you have your own website.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
My website is Shruti Kotwal Speed Skater.
yeah, so you guys can just check out that website and know more about her. And I think if she can literally come out of nowhere, decide to pursue a career in ice speed skating, and now is like living her dream, I think it's a kind of a motivation, inspiration we all can take, that if we're really determined enough, we can really go after whatever we set our eyes on. So thank you, Shruti. We're really grateful for you to come here and shell out 30 minutes for us. And I think today's Instagram live will be a great inspiration for whoever is watching it.
Thank you so much. This was a very nice interview, very smooth, and thank you for having me. I hope that you also like Play and Chime Foundation is quite new, but I wish you all
Yeah.
the best with whatever you're doing, and you yourself are an athlete. I read about you. So that's the best part about what you're doing, because you're an athlete
Yeah.
and you know what it feels and you've been through it all. So I'm glad that you started this, because in most cases, people who start are not athletes. So I'm
True.
very happy to meet an athlete who started something. So
Yeah,
good
we
luck.
had an entire group of mentors, and we all really felt that, whatever initial struggles we felt, there's a lot of lack of mentorship at the grassroots level, and we really want to
Yeah,
address that. So, if there's anything we can do to give back to the sports community, we're really ready to do it, and that's why we are here. So, I'm really
that's
glad you took
nice.
time, because, this little thing that you've done for us is really encouraging, it's really supportive, and thanks for all the acknowledgement.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye bye.